So welcome to Enjoy Dating and Find Healthy Love. And some of you have been answering in the chat where you're zooming from and how you found your way here. And also you've been sharing why you find dating sometimes not enjoyable. And I'm going to come back to that in a moment. And I do need to keep an eye on my Zoom bar in case other people join. Some of you know me pretty well. Some of you are new to me. So I'm going to describe very quickly who I am and why I'm hosting this workshop and why I think I am worth listening to on this topic. So I used to have a very different job and a very different life. These photos are from my single years, mostly single years, a couple of relationships that didn't work out, lots of unhealthy dating experiences. So I used to work as a political journalist. I used to work in the Houses of Parliament. I used to fly around with the Prime Minister. Prior to that, I lived in Mexico and Brazil as a foreign correspondent. I had a very busy, stressful, all-consuming job. I had no time to date. I made no time to date. Not only that, but I made no time to feel. So I didn't feel my feelings or process any of my feelings or understand what was going on inside. And during that period, all those years, I was engaging in numbing behaviors. So not feeling my feelings, but numbing them. So I was binge eating, I was binge drinking, I was compulsively working, which is a numbing behavior as well. I was engaging in disastrous relationships, getting hurt, hurting others, trying to date, failing to date, avoiding dating. So I was doing the whole range of these behaviors. I was falling for unavailable people. I was not falling for anyone for a while. I was getting involved with people who were attached to someone else, which I'm not proud of, but that was part of my pattern of being drawn to unavailable people. So I have had, a whole range of unhealthy behaviors when it comes to dating and relationships, and also when it comes to how I manage my feelings and how much I love myself and take care of myself. Which used to be very little. Things are different now. And some of you came here via the Metro article, which basically is a snapshot of my story, burnt out and single. I gave up London life and found love. And it wasn't that simple, but I will explain that journey to you with a view to sharing some tools that you can use in your life. This is from my wedding day, which brings me a lot of joy because I never thought I would get to that place. I didn't understand how other people found love. I didn't understand how come other people had engagement rings and wedding rings on their fingers. I used to stare at them in disbelief and just think, how do you do that? I don't know how to do that. I thought I wasn't cut out for relationships. I wasn't cut out for love. I didn't understand what was going wrong. So to get to a wedding day, which was an absolutely beautiful day, for me felt quite miraculous. And I have worked with many women who have felt that they were a hopeless case, that they weren't cut out for relationships, who have also wondered, why bother? I have a good life. Why should I bother with this messy, difficult, challenging relationship stuff? So, if we want to, I believe we can turn things around. So why isn't dating enjoyable? Now, some of you have already answered this in the chat, but if you have any more thoughts on this, I'd like you to put them in the chat now. And I'll just look at some of those that are already there. So it's easier not to do it. Many of us have reasonable lives, happy lives, busy jobs. It's easier not to do it. Dating sites can be wearing. We can have hurtful experiences. Okay, so we have identified that some men are or women or people, whoever we might be interested in, are allergic to commitment, or want friends with benefits. So few promising people left, and not what they make themselves out to be. Other points from earlier, so it can be exhausting, so challenging emotionally. So sometimes we have to let other people down because we don't like them and they like us. I remember that. I hated that. I felt responsible for their feelings, and I found it very hard to let people down. Or we really like someone and we're really into them, and then they let us down, and that's hurtful. So poor boundaries, get suckered in by narcissists, don't have time, feeling like I would have to impress somebody, and the thought is terrifying, risky, lost the fun of it. Yeah, thank you. And I have a few points I want to add to that, but I've just realized that in my little précis about who I am and what I do, I forgot to say that apart from getting married, aside from getting married, I also am a love, dating, and relationships coach and the author of How to Fall in Love, which is a book that you see behind me. And I have been coaching women for many years to have healthy and loving relationships. And I run courses and I run retreats and I coach one-to-one. And I have lots of success stories, which some of which I'll share with you in a moment. So back to dating, we lose our confidence. So here are some reasons I came up with before. So we get let down, we hurt, we feel rejected. It can be confusing, hard to make decisions. So often I'm sharing from my own experience. So I was always in that position where I don't know if this person's right for me or not. And I was so confused and baffled, and that was exhausting. We can't find anyone we find attractive. This is something I hear a lot. All the suitable, eligible people are taken. Our hopes get dashed, and that's disappointing. It feels like we're wasting our time. Sometimes we fall for unavailable people, commitment phobes, and that is hurtful. We don't know how to do it. So often today, because it's all app-based or website-based, mostly app-based, there are techniques, there are tools that we need to know. We need to know how to do it. We need to know how to write a good profile, how to communicate with people. So sometimes we don't have the knowledge, and then we don't want to do it because we don't know how. And we can feel alone with it. I believe that we can all overcome these obstacles, which is why I'm hosting this and why I do the work that I do. So these are the reasons why dating isn't enjoyable. So where do we go wrong? And these are some of the things that I used to go wrong, areas in which I used to go wrong, or I used to have learning experiences, growth experiences. And these are the areas in which my clients often struggle. So we ignore or override our intuition. So what do I mean by intuition? It's our inner voice. It's the wise woman inside. It's the part of us that knows what is right for us and how to act in our best interests. Often that intuition is very quiet or it's blocked. So, I won't go too deep into this right now, but often we have childhood experiences that made us question our intuition, that made us think that we can't trust ourselves, we can't believe in ourselves. Often we confuse fear and intuition. So there's a section on that in my book. We think, oh, this is my intuition. I don't like that person. I'll reject them, when it might be our fear. And often we're completely disconnected from our intuition because we are numbing our feelings. So we're high on something. We're numbed out on food, on booze. And I speak from experience, on screens, on work. So we don't make time to sit still and really ask ourselves, how am I feeling? How am I feeling? And, this is something you could do right now. You could just pause for a moment, and often I suggest that we put our hand on our chest or on our heart, some part of our body, and we ask ourselves how we're really feeling. And you might ask yourself how I'm really feeling in this moment, or how am I really feeling in relation to love, dating, and relationships. I hear that some of you are feeling frustrated, perhaps terrified, that you don't have time for it. But what's really going on inside? What lies beneath all that? You know, I think if I had thought about this when I was single and having lots of painful relationships and long periods of loneliness, I would have connected with a loneliness and some sadness and some regret. And I do caveat that by saying that my single years, many of those years were wonderful. And there is nothing, you know, I have nothing against being single if we are happily single. I was happily single for some of those years. For the other years, I was painfully dating and getting in a mess and feeling sad and wondering at the age of 40, what has this all been about? Why have I built such an amazing career, a nice life in London? I've got money in the bank. I can travel. I've got all the freedom and independence that I ever wanted. But I feel sad because I'd like to share this with someone. I'd like a companion. I'd like touch. I'd like compassion. I'd like comfort. So single is good if we're happily single. But many of us are ready. We are ready for a change, and we're ready for companionship. So we ignore or override our intuition, or we can't hear it. We date with a craving for love, for affection, for validation. Those of you who know my work say that I know that I often say that we date. If we date with a craving, it's like going supermarket shopping when we're hungry, when we're starving. So we run around and we put all manner of things in our baskets that we don't need, that aren't healthy, like sugar, chocolate, crisps, sweets. Perhaps we eat on the way out of the supermarket. I used to do that a lot. So this is dating with a craving. It's when we don't have any patience. We don't wait to choose. We just get chosen and think, okay, someone loves me, let's go for it. We override our intuition and we ignore red flags. So this is dating with a craving. We date as a wounded child rather than a healthy adult. So I do lots of work myself around my inner child. That might be a new expression to you, or you might be familiar with it. But many of us have wounded parts inside of ourselves and a faulty template for relationships, so that we go into relationships and we get triggered by people. Perhaps they remind us of our father, or they remind us of our mother or a sibling, and they trigger us, and they trigger a response in us. For example, when I first started kissing my husband, he triggered a response in me. I had flashbacks, I had triggers, and if I hadn't been supported during those days, I would have run away. And I'm glad that I stayed because the relationship worked out and we got married. But if I had listened to this sort of knee-jerk, get out of here, run for the hills reaction that I was having, then I would still be single and dating, and probably not very successfully. So we need to heal our inner wounds, our inner child. Often we struggle to set boundaries, or we overstep our boundaries. Perhaps we never learned to set boundaries. Perhaps nobody set good boundaries with us. Perhaps we're frightened to set boundaries because we don't want to provoke anger, or we're frightened to set boundaries because we don't want to lose the relationship. And that is because we are great craving. So if we're scared to set boundaries and say, actually, I don't like you speaking to me like that, or I want to go home now, I don't want to carry on this evening, or I'd like to meet you for an hour, but no longer, or I don't want you to communicate with your ex-girlfriend, or whatever it is. If we're afraid to set boundaries, it will be because we're afraid of losing the other person, or we're afraid of their anger, we're afraid of rejection or abandonment. But then we end up in an unhealthy relationship because we have accepted far less than we deserve, and we haven't spoken up for ourselves. Sometimes we don't feel lovable or valuable, so we don't love ourselves sufficiently, or value ourselves sufficiently, or respect ourselves sufficiently, and we end up accepting less than we deserve. Our behavior is driven by fears. And when I say behavior, that could be falling into relationships all the time, dating people who aren't good for us, or it could be avoiding dating. So avoiding it altogether, because deep down, it's not really that we're too busy, although we are busy. It is that we are frightened. Now, that was my story. It might not be yours, but it might relate to some of you. I was very busy working in Parliament, working as a journalist, social life, sports, etc. I was busy, but that's not why I didn't find love. It's because I was frightened. I was frightened of commitment, frightened of intimacy, frightened of rejection, frightened of abandonment, frightened of letting somebody down and hurting the other person. So I'm going to have a workshop coming up soon specifically about fears, but you might relate to some of those fears that I've shared about. Often we don't ask for support, so we're kind of doing this on our own in a vacuum. And sometimes we can't trust our best thinking. I definitely couldn't when I was dating. I couldn't trust myself to make good decisions, and I needed to check it out with other people. I've just met this person. I kind of like them, but they're still living with their ex-partner. Now, I think that's okay because I really like them. But what do you think, friend, counselor, coach, therapist? What do you think? And I needed someone to help give me a reality check. Or, I'm seeing this guy, but he always shows up late on dates, and he never proposes where we meet. It's all on me, and he's a bit flaky. I mean, I really like him, and this is a true story. I really like him, and I don't want to set a boundary with him because I really like him and I want this to continue. But I check it out with someone. I check it out with other people who are supporting me, and they help me to make a wise choice, which is that a flaky person who doesn't show up, who doesn't propose where we should meet, and it's all down to me, that person isn't up for a relationship, isn't up for commitment. So we set a boundary. And yes, in my case, I set a boundary. I lost the relationship. It hurt. But then I went on to meet someone else and get married. So often when we stand up for ourselves, have a voice, we might lose what we think is the only relationship for us, but it isn't. I'm just having a look what's in the chat. I don't have much experience of any attempts at setting boundaries being respected, and don't seem to remember that I can now set boundaries. And if someone doesn't respect them, I can leave the situation. I often suggest when we're kind of new to boundaries, which I was kind of in my 30s, I started understanding about boundaries late 30s, that we practice in small ways. We practice with ourselves. So we set a healthy boundary with ourselves around what time we go to bed, when we get up, how much exercise we do, what we eat. We set boundaries with friends. That can be hard, but maybe you have a friend who lets you down or doesn't show up. You sit down and you have a conversation with them. And I know that's frightening. We have to choose wisely the people we decide to be honest with and set boundaries with. Well, we set boundaries with everyone, and then some people aren't going to stand for it and they're going to leave, and that's the right outcome. Or if they don't accept our boundaries, we can negotiate them as long as we're respecting ourselves, and then we can leave the situation if it's not right for us. I mean, a very simple boundary I often suggest, I call it a boundary, you might call it something different, but whenever I whenever I'm in a restaurant and the food comes and it's not hot enough, I always send it back. In the old days, I used to just eat it because I was too embarrassed about making a fuss. I always send it back and ask if you can warm up my soup. It's not hot enough. For me, that is a boundary. If I'm paying for soup, I want it to be hot. So things like that help me to practice that, get that muscle working. So this boundary setting is a muscle. And I did a little video the other day for my Instagram around getting muscles working that have gone to sleep. When I was learning Spanish, I couldn't pronounce in school at 15, 16, I couldn't roll my R's. I couldn't say R. And the muscle, the roof of my mouth, which is a muscle that needs to function, had gone to sleep or wasn't working. I got it working through practice. Over and over again, I practiced and I got it working. So we can get these muscles working. It takes practice, and often we need support. This is the slippery slope, which I really like this expression. You know, I work with many women, and you may have taken a course with me or been on a retreat with me or been in one of my groups, but perhaps you are still struggling or still being rejected, and that really hurts. Whenever anyone comes to me with this challenge, you know, I always ask, where did the slippery slope start? So you might have got into a relationship with someone, and at point A, date 2, they said something that was a bit dodgy, a bit flaky, a bit disrespectful. You had a question in your mind about this person. I'm not sure. That feels a bit funny. That doesn't land very well with me. But you let it go. And then that is where the slippery slope begins, and we hurtle down it. We go like this skier, we go fast down that slippery slope because we ignore our intuition. We're not supported. We don't check it out with other people. So if you've had experiences of ending up in relationships with commitment phobes, people who won't commit to you, won't value you, who suddenly turn around and reject you, even though you thought it was going well, ask yourself, when did the slippery slope start? Just look back. And often I'm not saying it's always easy to identify these points. You know, somebody mentioned in the chat that they fall for narcissists. Some people are very clever and manipulative. But in many cases, there is a definite moment when we ignored something, didn't speak up, because we were craving love, because we haven't had love for ages, because we really want a companion, because we really fancy the person, and the slippery slope begins. And then we're in it. We're in the relationship, and it's not too late, but it snowballs, and then it's hard to get out. So just have a think. If you hear something when you're speaking to someone, when you're dating someone, I mean, this applies to life as well. If you're going for a job interview and something doesn't feel quite right, that might be the start of a slippery slope. So look out for that. Keep this picture in your mind. Okay, so someone says the guy barged into the bar and didn't bother to ask me what I wanted to drink. He just sorted himself out. Disrespectful. Yeah. So that's a clear sign that, you know, that's the start of a slippery slope. If we decide to accept that behavior, then we teach people how to treat us. So that particular man we have taught him to disrespect us, to not pay attention to us. We have taught him that we're okay with pretty rubbish treatment. That's okay. You can treat me like that. We have taught him how to treat us. So we teach other people how to treat us. So there's a really difficult balance that we need to strike. So often we criticize too soon, we judge too soon, and that could be our fear of commitment, our fear of intimacy. We rule everyone out and we say there aren't any available people left or nice people left. We rule everyone out. And I did this in many superficial ways and deep ways. So I would rule people out. When I lived in London, I would rule people out based on the area of London they lived in, based on the job that they did, based on the university that they'd been to. And I know that sounds really superficial, but I had in my mind that I needed this particular highly driven, ambitious, high achieving bloke who would be absolutely fine in my circles of Oxford graduates, parliamentary journalists, politicians. I had in my mind this person that I needed. So anyone who didn't fit that mold, he was out for me. Until I transformed and understood that I needed someone completely different to that. I didn't need a carbon copy of myself. I needed someone who brought complementary qualities to the relationship. So often we judge people too soon, and that is based many times on our fear. So I'm afraid of true intimacy, true commitment, true relationship, because my early life experiences of relationships were painful. Dad left the family home. I felt abandoned. I thought it was my fault. I didn't feel loved. I felt rejected. Therefore, love equals pain. Love equals rejection. Love equals abandonment. I am afraid of it. So I will judge people, criticize people, push people away, or I will subconsciously attract and be attracted to emotionally unavailable people, because that saves me from intimacy, saves me from commitment. We're always going to be distant, and that suits my own fear of commitment. And this is one of the, for me, this was a golden nugget to understand that I had a fear of commitment. It was transformative in my relationship journey, and it has been for many of the people I've worked with. So some of you might want to reflect on that. So there's the balance between giving someone a chance. I always suggest that we give someone a fighting chance. We give someone a little bit of time, and we don't judge too soon, especially not on superficial characteristics. And then there's the other side of that balance, where we often make excuses for poor behavior, or we rationalize red flags, a bit like what I was talking about just before, the slippery slope. So I have a couple of clients that I'm talking to right now who do this. They rationalize. So someone behaves poorly, or mistreats us, or says something, or is rude or offhand, and we think, oh, they've had a bad day at work, or they're tired, or they don't know any better, or, oh, it'll be okay next time. We rationalize. And this is because we want to overlook the poor behavior, because we want love so much that we are willing to compromise ourselves. We are willing to undervalue ourselves. So if we can find the right balance between not judging people too soon and not excusing poor behavior, and we do that by checking it out with other people. That's how I did it. We're supported, we're part of a community, we have a coach, we check it out with other people. Just have a look what's in the chat. So guilty of what I think is called trauma bonding. I thought it was a spark, but it wasn't the right sort of spark. It was a recognition of the hurt parts, not necessarily healthy. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. So I have the sections on my book in this, and this comes up in my courses that I'll talk about in a little bit in my Laying the Foundations course. So there's chemistry and there's chemistry. So we often think chemistry is wonderful. Like, okay, my body is on fire for this person. This is amazing chemistry. It might be, but it might be based on unhealthy connection. It might be we have one wounded person and we have another wounded person, neither of whom have done any healing on their wounds. And these wounds fit together so perfectly, and they come together like this, like two magnets attracting. and then they stick together and they bond. And this is unhealthy chemistry. And it takes a little bit of time and lots of self-awareness to understand the difference. But it is important to know that not every relationship that feels like magic at the start and on fire is healthy for us. So we have to find our way through that. Someone asks if we have to have an initial attraction to a person physically. I would say we have to be curious about them. So if I think about my now marriage, when I first met my husband, I don't know, I thought he looked a bit odd. He had long hair. He was 45 and he had long hair down to here. I thought that's not for me. But there was something, he had a very kind face and a nice energy. I was drawn to that. So I was curious. I wanted to know more. Obviously, to sustain any form of relationship, we need a physical attraction. But the physical attraction can come with an emotional connection. I would always give people a chance to see if you can form an emotional connection. And try and do that first before jumping into bed with people, ideally, she says from experience. Here's my house with what I call weak foundations. So all of my work is based around what I call the Foundations for Love formula. And it is a formula that is in my book. It's in all my courses. It's in my one-to-one coaching. And this is the opposite of having healthy foundations. So it's like a house with really poor foundations. It's going to fall down. So you might have your own interpretation of the kind of foundations that you think you need in order to date healthily and find healthy love. For me, they are, and these are quite common in my clients, and these are the things that we work on. So disconnected from ourselves and our feelings, as I talked about earlier. So if we are numbing out on food or alcohol or drugs or screens or TV or work, and we don't have to be perfect, we all numb a little bit. But if we are disconnected from our feelings and we don't actually know how we're feeling, how are we going to know how we're feeling when we are dating? How are we going to pause and connect to our intuition? We're just going to go straight in there, and any sense of anxiety or, any sense that something's not quite right here, we'll just eat on it or work on it or drink on it. We'll get rid of it. We'll numb it. So we're disconnected from our feelings. That is a poor foundation, and that is going to lead to the house falling down. We have low self-esteem and low self-worth. So we don't truly love ourselves. And this is tricky because, we can say that I love myself, but then we might have really deep wounds from our childhoods that we haven't managed to heal. So how lovable do I really feel? If I was rejected as a child, if I was abandoned as a child, if a parent left or died or left me in some way, then that causes a deep self-esteem wound. And that needs a lot of healing. And some of you will have done lots of this healing before. I work with very emotionally intelligent women, but we always need to heal it. I think we always need to heal it more. I'm still healing my self-esteem all the time. Still learning all the time to respect myself in relationships, in work relationships. Still learning all the time, what healthy boundaries are. So, this is an ongoing piece of work. Another weak foundation is that we're not aware of our relationship fears. So we look around and we say, all those people over there are unavailable, afraid of commitment. And we don't look inside and say, actually, maybe I have some fear of commitment. Maybe I have some fear of intimacy. Maybe I have some fear of relationship. Maybe I think relationships might be suffocating. They might take my freedom. They might take from me. I had a template of relationships obviously based on my relationships with my parents, combination of thinking that I would be left and abandoned or that I would be suffocated and trapped. So if my template for relationships says that I am going to be left or trapped, then I'm not going to want to do relationships. And I didn't for years. I dedicated all my energy to my career. I had relationships, but they weren't healthy ones. I fell for unavailable people. For 4 years when I was living in Mexico, I dated an absolutely lovely, gorgeous man who I'm still very fond of, who is now gay and married to a lovely man. And, at the time we were dating, we were in a heterosexual relationship, but he was really emotionally unavailable, as was I. So, falling for unavailable men, falling for people who were attached to someone else, they were all because of my fears of true intimacy and true commitment. So if we are unaware of how our fears create our unhealthy patterns, then that's not a strong foundation. And if we are craving love, affection, company, validation, then that is also a weak foundation. Yeah, and some of the work I do on my foundations course is around fears and patterns and how they connect. And it's really lovely, lovely and enlightening work, sometimes difficult work, but enlightening. Let me just have a look in the chat. I often wonder how healed I have to be. I've done a lot of work, but still have a way to go. So our hurt happens in relationship, and our healing happens in relationship too. So if you have reasonable foundations, and I'm going to talk about this in a moment, if you have reasonable foundations, the next step is to take the show on the road, to go dating, and to do so supported. I used to think I had to be totally perfect and sorted before I could look for a healthy relationship. And that wasn't the case. I just needed to have good foundations, and I needed to be well supported. I needed to have someone to check this out with. I needed a professional. In my case, I needed a professional who was on my side, who I could speak to every few weeks, who I could tell that I'm about to run away from this guy, who could flag up that I might be afraid. It might be, it might be that he is actually right for me rather than wrong for me, and I might be afraid. Yeah, perhaps you just need more support as you go dating rather than going it alone. I tend to lose myself in relationships. That's common. And, a self-esteem, enmeshment, where we kind of want to somehow join with the other person, be who they want us to be, change our shape, change our size, change our views to make them happy, to make sure that they don't reject us. That all comes from the craving and not having faith that if we show up authentically, we will find the right person for us. Sorry. Is it not normal to have longings for love, affection, companionship? Absolutely. It is normal to have those longings. I think there's a difference. What I'm trying to differentiate between is our normal human desire to be in a relationship, to have a companion, to be in love, to be supported and cared for. That's all normal, and we all deserve that. The issue is when we have a craving that is a little bit out of control, that perhaps we haven't met some of those needs in our life. So we need to try and meet some of those needs ourselves through self-love, good friends, a fulfilling life, and then get some support so that we're not going dating with a craving. Because we want to make sure we're not overriding our intuition, we're not ignoring red flags. Yeah, well, I work with lots of women in a similar position who have actually built a wonderful life and feel very fulfilled and have really interesting work and don't have much time. But as you say, you're here, and deep down there is a part of you that is looking for a companion. I would say it sounds like this part of you that would like a companion. And I had a really full life as well, an interesting life, an interesting job, but I really wanted someone by my side to share my life with, and it was really important to me. And I understand now why I wanted that, because it's great fun, um, makes me laugh every day. My husband, that is, our relationship, we have a lot of fun together. Someone to support you and whom you can support. I mean, this is something perhaps for another day, but one of the things we look at on my courses and in my coaching is why on earth we would want to be in a relationship when it's quite hard to do it, when perhaps we feel that there's a lot of unsuitable people. So we need to know what the advantages are, so that we don't lose, because we need energy and enthusiasm for this. If we go into something feeling really downbeat, not optimistic, thinking that it's not going to work out, then that's the energy we will bring to it. You know that from your work, from your careers. Like, if you take that energy in, that's what we'll get out of it. So we do need to know why it's worth it. I'm not sure if that's a bit blurred for you, but this is the cart before the horse scenario, where we go dating without having healthy foundations. And this is the cart before the horse. So we end up in an unhealthy relationship, and then we get hurt. And we want to put the horse before the cart so that it flows nicely. So this is a self-defeating cycle, or a vicious cycle. I like the word self-defeating over vicious. And we start over here. Oops, that's the brick wall. I'll come to that in a moment. We start over here. I'll just run through this quickly because I've shared a little bit about it. We have weak foundations. We have poor boundaries. We have unresolved childhood wounds. We have a fear of intimacy and commitment. We have low self-esteem. We're craving love, and we don't have support. And then if you follow the arrow, this leads to certain behaviors and patterns. We say yes when we mean no. We attract people who don't value us. We attract commitment phobes. We fall for unavailable types. We override our intuition, and we rationalize red flags. Perhaps we also don't take the time to figure out all the good things about a relationship. So we aren't positive or optimistic about the process. And the result of this, if you follow the arrow around, is we get hurt, or we hurt others. So not only did I get hurt when I was dating and looking for love, but I hurt others. I got into relationships with people who I knew weren't right for me from the start, but I convinced myself that they were. I convinced myself that I fancied them, that I could make it work. And then I had to let them down. And that's hard. And it's what someone shared earlier in the chat, if we take responsibility for another person's feelings, obviously we want to be a nice person, but if we take responsibility for another person's feelings beyond being just a nice person, it's going to be hard to end the relationship. So follow the arrow around. We don't feel enough. We get abandoned. We feel faulty. We feel defective. We think, I can't do this dating thing. And then follow the arrow around. Our self-esteem takes a hit. We lose hope. We come up with these expressions, convenient expressions. All men are useless, or all women are this, or all people are this. These very generic statements that basically rule everyone out. We build our defenses. We put up walls, and we feel worse about ourselves. And then that's a cycle that perpetuates. So we want to turn that. This is a cycle that ends up with this, which is a brick wall. So I often used to say that dating felt like banging my head against a brick wall. And some of you might have the same experience. It hurts. So this is a question for you. You might want to share it in the chat. In what condition are you dating? And, pop something in the chat, but I want you to be really honest with yourself, and I want you to take this question away and I want you to answer it honestly. In what condition are you dating? Maybe it's you are feeling depleted, like the tree on the left there. So you're feeling worn out, exhausted, undernourished, undernurtured, no roots, you're not blossoming. Maybe you're in fear. Or maybe you are like the other tree, that you're flourishing, that you have deep roots, you have a healthy trunk, you have lots of sunlight and daylight, or they are metaphors for what we need in order to thrive. So in what condition are you dating? How are your foundations? Do you love yourself? Do you take care of yourself? Are you numbing? Are you avoiding? Do you work too hard? Do you eat well? Do you get enough sleep? Do you understand your fears? Do you know your patterns? Have you done some healing? I just wanted to share the difference that having healthy foundations can make. These are a couple of my clients. So Anne, we worked on her fears about being in a committed relationship, and she had a wonderful wedding last year. Again, with the client below, we worked on her judgments and her fears and why she was pushing someone away. And she also married last year. And marriage doesn't have to be your intention or your goal at all. But I know many of you would like some form of a healthy relationship. Feeling ready, but a little frightened of rejection and need some support, and plan to revisit your 14 Days of Love course to work on self-love whilst taking this first step towards dating. Great. I hear self-awareness. Surviving. So I did a TEDx talk recently, and it was on surviving versus thriving. So if we're in survival mode, that's when we get into these unhealthy relationships, because we're basically looking for someone to rescue us, to save us, to dig us out of the hole, to care for us because we're struggling to care for ourselves. So if you are surviving, we need to start thinking about ways to thrive first. Someone says they're having a dating break because it was exhausting. Yeah, and it takes a lot to get to the stage of even meeting for a date or two. I appreciate that. And I do suggest that we try and move things along. When I say move things along quickly, I don't mean rush in, but I do mean try to meet quickly, either on a video call or face to face, because these extended WhatsApp chats, messaging things, I don't think they're very healthy. They definitely weren't for me. Thriving in some areas and not in others. Being single undermines my confidence and makes me feel undernourished. Depleted. Dating who turns up. Thinking that's meant to be. Overriding doubts. Doubting myself. We want to choose, not just wait to be chosen. And it takes courage to choose, because when we wait to choose, we might end up saying goodbye to some people who are choosing us, but who we don't want to be with. And if we've got that craving, and if we're longing for love, and if we've got a deep wound that we haven't done some healing on, then as soon as someone chooses us, we'll be right. Yep, great. I'll come with you then. You can choose. You can choose. It takes courage and confidence, but you can choose. Yeah, this is the point I was just making. It's hard to walk away from people when we know that there may be nothing better. There will be something better. If the people are unsuitable, there will be something better. And just a note on, I mean, this I go deep with this in my courses and in my coaching, but if we've experienced early life trauma, we will have very black and white thinking. If you think that children are very black and white in their thinking. And if our inner child is running the show, if the wounded parts of ourselves are in charge, our thinking will be very black and white. There is only one fish in the sea. It has to be this person. It's got to be this person. And when you think like that, when you're in black and white thinking, just take a moment, pause, and try and move yourself into more shades of gray, not the movie, but or the book, but shades of gray thinking. So that is adult thinking, where it could be this person. This person could be right for me, but actually, this person isn't treating me well or is unsuitable. So there isn't only one fish in the sea. There are more fish. So yeah, think about that. So where to meet someone, I think I'll come on to that at the end. I'll just say very briefly, because I know the dating apps can be tricky. One thing about the dating apps is how we're using them. So we might need a bit of guidance on how to use them effectively. But I always suggest, I know you'll have heard it before, but that we think about doing things differently in our lives, shake up the routine, do something differently, follow your heart, take a risk, get yourself out your comfort zone, do a new activity every month that takes you out of your comfort zone, introduces you to new people. I think the key is to be living an authentic, joyful life. And that might require working a bit less. It might require taking a risk. It might require spending a bit of money, do things differently. If it's not working how you're doing them right now, do things differently. And that will be different for all of you. But take a chance, shake up your routine. I can come back to that at the end. So this is another client who built her foundations. Greater awareness. It was like running a race, having had a coach show me how to run effectively, encouraging me to put in the training, and with a bunch of people cheering me on from the sidelines, picking me up when I tripped. This is someone who took one of my group programs, which I can talk about at the end of this workshop. And if you imagine you have a coach and you have teammates, so you're not doing it alone. You are supported. So when you have a question, when you don't know how to communicate to someone, when you need to end something, when you need to take a step forwards and face your fears, you are supported. So this is what we want to create, the virtuous circle. So we have healthy foundations. We have strong boundaries, not walls. There's a difference. We have an awareness of our early wounds. We are emotionally available to ourselves. So we're available to our own emotions and therefore available for others. We have healthy self-esteem. We feel enough as ourselves. Like we don't need to change ourselves or become someone we're not in order to feel enough. And we are supported. So if you follow the arrow, if you're in this position with healthy foundations, you are able to say no. You are able to choose rather than be chosen. You can listen to your intuition. You attract people who value you. You attract emotionally available people because you are available. So you date as an adult, not as a wounded child. You actually enjoy the experience and you have positive experiences and you build emotional resilience. So it's not like you will necessarily meet your lifelong partner on date one, but you will have positive experiences that are different to the experiences that you have had before. That you, if you're supported, you will have joyful experiences. You will think, you will check things out with other people. You will make healthy choices. Your self-esteem will grow. You'll feel more hopeful. You'll enjoy your life. You'll have more space and energy for your dreams. You'll feel more taken care of. You won't have that craving. And ultimately, this will lead to a healthy relationship. I believe it will. I believe it will. Even if you think there aren't any good people left or everyone is taken, or I think those are all statements that we use to protect ourselves from hurt, to protect ourselves from rejection. So I think they're just defenses. Just like our work and busyness, that can be defense. That can be our defense as well. So then we have the horse before the cart. Not a very nice horse. I couldn't find a better one. We have the horse before the cart. So we have our foundations in place. Then we go dating with courage, clarity, and confidence. If we do it the other way around, we are in a vicious cycle, which just grinds us down, leads to lower self-esteem, even worse choices, withdrawing from the whole process. So horse before cart. So this is a foundations check. You can read through this now. You can measure yourself against it. There are lots of other foundations. These are some of the most important ones. Connected to yourself. Spend time with your intuition. What I mean by that is you have some form of practice where you spend time connecting to your feelings. This could be a morning meditation, could be a morning walk in nature, could be journaling, could be listening to an inspiring talk. I've got a meditation on YouTube that you can listen to. So you spend some time getting to know your feelings and connecting with your intuition. You feel lovable and valuable. You have healthy self-esteem and confidence. You understand your patterns in relationships, where they come from. You understand that because of your early life relationships, perhaps your relationship with your dad or your mum or your earliest caregivers, you understand that that set you up to have particular relationship patterns. And once we dismantle that, once we know that, become aware of it, dismantle those patterns, we can start having different experiences. You have support to face your fears and change your patterns, because it takes courage. It takes courage. We've let go of our exes. So we've kind of cleared the slate. A lot of people who work with me have got sort of people hanging around in their hearts or in their minds or in their phones that we need to politely move out of our lives. And we've let go of some of those broken dreams, and we are moving forwards to a new reality. We know how to set and keep healthy boundaries. We enjoy our lives and our work, but we don't overwork. And we have the know-how and support to navigate the world of dating, because it can be hard, not just dating, but even like the early stages of a relationship can be very difficult as well. Often some of the people I quoted in those testimonials, some of those people were in the early stages of a relationship and they wanted to run. And it turned out that those were the right relationships, but they needed to stay and move through their fears. So often we need help to get out of the unhealthy ones, but we do need help to get into and stay in the healthy relationships. The gift of self-awareness. So this is a lovely quote from one of my graduates of my foundations program. Very quickly, you opened my mind to what has actually been going on in my relationships my whole life. That's a very flattering comment, and I own that, and I believe that to be true. And I often say that I think because of my early life experiences, growing up around alcoholism, learning to read the room, and being extremely perceptive of what was going on around me, having a strong intuition, although doubting it, but then learning to trust it. I really pride myself when I coach and run my courses on seeing very quickly what is going on, what the patterns are and where they come from. And I've been doing this for quite a long time. And I feel like I can quickly understand what's going on and help you to dismantle the patterns and create a different dynamic and a different narrative. And that, I believe, is one of my gifts and one of my skills. And it came from my pain. Often we find our purpose in our pain. It came from my pain, but I'm grateful for that. And Alice took my foundations program and my date with courage, clarity, and confidence program. And she is in a healthy relationship. And Alice has got quite a lot of testimonials, actually. You'll find she's one of the huge advocates of my work. I would love you to be in my How to Fall in Love program. It has 2 pillars. It starts with laying the foundations, and then we date with courage, clarity, and confidence. You can join for 3 months, or you can join for 6 months. You can join for 3 months and then decide whether to continue, or you can join for 6 months. And there's a discount if you do that. And the group program is launching again next Monday. And there's lots of information about that, which I will put in an email to you. And I will also share it in the chat when I stop sharing my screen. It includes regular group coaching, game-changing insights, reflective exercises, a supportive community, accountability, and much more. So when I talked about not dating alone, not dating blindly, checking things out with people, this is the community that I want to offer you to be able to do that, to date in a healthy way. And I have an offer, 2 offers actually. Actually, it's sign up by February the 15th. I've got that date wrong, but I'll put this in an email to you for £100 off. And there are some bonus coaching calls on offer as well. If you would like to chat to me about this, you can do so by booking a free call with me. I'll put the link in the chat as well. Or sending me an email, or you can read all about that program and watch some testimonials. So the goal of my work for you is to save time, money, energy, and heartache. So I know some of the problems we identified at the beginning, that it's demoralizing, or it feels like time wasting, and also the money we spend on dating apps or websites or going out on dates, the energy and the heartache. I'd really like to save you time, money, energy, and heartache. So that can be through my courses or through my one-to-one coaching or some other options that I'll share in a moment. But here's a few more quotes. So this is what I mentioned before. Hugely transformational and amazing value for money. We've got to the bottom of stuff that I've never been able to understand before, because I know many of you have done work on yourselves before. There is always more work to do. And this is my niche. This is my area of expertise. You pointed out things to me that I hadn't figured out in all my years of therapy. Now that's quite a flattering comment as well, but I am proud of the fact that I can do that for people. So I would love to do that for you. So what next if you would like support from me on your journey? So there is the How to Fall in Love group program, which I've just mentioned, starting next Monday. I will share the details in the chat and I will send them to you by email. You can explore one-to-one coaching with me. For often people prefer to work one-to-one. I have a love-in on Valentine's Day. It's an opportunity to drop in and feel some love if you are alone and a bit triggered by the day. It's on Zoom. It's like this, but I'm not leading a workshop and I'm not telling you what my courses are about. I'm just here to welcome you for a virtual hug. I've got a couple of Zoom workshops coming up: Face Your Fears and Change Your Patterns, and Heal Your Wounded Child and Relate as a Healthy Adult. They are both paid workshops, but they are low investment, so I can send you details of those. Or you can take a self-paced course. I have lots of self-paced courses. How to find an emotionally available partner. The 14 Days of Love, which several people have mentioned. You can take days 1 to 4 without charge, and then there's it's just £22. Managing triggers to form healthy relationships. I have self-paced versions of Laying the Foundations and Date with Courage, Clarity, and Confidence. So I don't want to overwhelm you with all those details. I will put everything in an email and try and keep it simple. But where I would really love you to be, if you can, if you are able and willing, is in the group program if you want that transformative community group experience, or in the one-to-one coaching if you want tailored individual support. And you deserve to be supported. Now, this is a photograph from one of my retreats in Turkey, the Love Retreat. I don't have one in the diary, but I will return to them at some point. But this is what it feels to be supported on our journey to love. This is how it feels. So yeah, don't forget to date. In order to date with courage, clarity, and confidence, we need to lay our foundations for love first. That is my approach. That is the backbone of the work that I do, because it works. I believe it works. And don't go it alone. I know it works. Yeah, there is a question. Lots of women on this call. Do you think men are finding it hard to meet women too, and same-sex relationships? So I market my work to women, and my group courses are women only. I have a couple of men on my mailing list, and I have coached men, and I have successfully coached men. So there are men who are finding it hard to meet women, and there are men who have unhealthy relationship patterns, who need support, and those men who are emotionally intelligent and wise reach out for help. And I've got some wonderful testimonials from the men I've worked with. Yeah, I do believe men need support, definitely. And we all, not all of us, but many of us emerged from childhood into adulthood with unhealthy relationship patterns, men and women and people. Do we have to complete the Laying the Foundations course first, or can we do the second part only? You can definitely do the second part, Date with Courage, Clarity, and Confidence, as a self-paced. If you would like to do it as part of the group program, send me an email and we can talk about that. That can happen, so I can share that with you. It is possible to start with the dating course if you have your foundations nicely in place already. Thank you for those of you who are watching on recording. And yeah, I wish you all the best with your journey to love. And I hope that you come and work with me at some point. It would be a pleasure to support you.